At the end of the day, like what makes a successful startup is iterative cycles and making sure your team is like moving fast from feedback. Funding does not equal success. Funding is a data point to say that maybe you're working on something correctly. And anyone who can execute in front of me is a good person to work with. I was a 30-year-old when I started my first company. So it took 30 years to get to that moment where I'm like, we're going all in on this. Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, he talks about like, don't quit college. For me, I didn't quit college. I went to college. I got my first job, got my second job, my third job. And then I jumped into my own startup. They were all startups in their own right. So they were true startups, like very quick, nimble iterations. In your head, think of those people that are abnormally smart that you either went to college with or you went to, you were working with, or even in high school, and just be like, hey, I knew you could code like video games. Would you want to do something with me? When you ask somebody those questions, it like becomes more real because you can kind of ask people and see where their head's at. I think you need to work on what you're passionate about, even if you don't have domain expertise in it. Like for me, I was very good at software development. And that is like a blank slate for any space. Like you can go anywhere. And that's the way I felt about it. But it was little, there were like glimmers of like change that I could see. And I'm just like, it's apparent to me things are going to change. And one of those like apparent things that I just saw everywhere was like, I would go to the doctor with my family, and like the doctors were using CDs. Everybody, I'm dating myself, but we would use CDs. You'd load it into like a laptop or a server, and then you would install like the medical record on the server in your office. That was just the way things were done pre 2008, 2007, 6, 5. And in my head, I was thinking, let's just put it in a browser. But we weren't even thinking about medical records per se. We were thinking about scheduling. So like the first intuition from my co-founder was like, scheduling makes sense in the cloud, in a web browser. He just intuitively wanted to, and Dr. Chrono means time. Chrono means time. So he intuitively was like, let's build a calendar. And I'm like, doesn't seem wrong to me, because in the web, you need a calendar. It's obvious to me. Maybe this is the thing. Like, let's build a calendar. Because everybody needs to calendar like their patients, and everybody needs to just calendar in life. So if we build a calendar for doctors, that might just be a thing to start. It took a few months to really get like things really refined, and like it was, it took months. I'm not going to say it was easy. Like we were trying to get it working the way that we wanted it to work. I mean, for me, I just would say, would I use this if I was a doctor? I always put myself in the shoes of the user. And I was like, would I use this product if I was a doctor, a physician? Would I use this? And that never left me the whole journey of the company. And that's just the way, like even now, like on my new startup, I have the same like mental models where I just look at the product and say, is this something I would be proud to use? So back then we built version 1. And I was like, I would use this if I was a doctor. I would use it. We showed it to one doctor, and he's like, I would use it. And he was using it daily. And it was really the first physician to really like get acclimated with the product. But we were also making it for us. Like it wasn't for him. As strange as that sounds, I was like, I want something I would use as a doctor. If I was a doctor, what would make me feel good about my practice? So like I would always go back to it. And the nice thing about like physicians and medicine, everyone can really relate. If you really like, if you think about yourself as a doctor, you really at the end, like at a core level, you can like pretend and say like, if I was a physician, what would I want? I know that sounds crazy, but it's like you go back to like the 1800s, the 1700s, they wanted their beautiful their leather bag, and they wanted all of the tools in there, and they wanted to like come to the patient's house, and they wanted to like lay it all out, and they wanted to have medicine, and they wanted to like have all of that. But like fast forward to like where we are in like 2008, 2009, I'm like, I kind of want to look at my calendar in different rooms or different locations. The calendar on my screen, can I look at it from home, and can I look at it in the medical practice? I would want that, right? So I like was resonating with that. I would want to look at my calendar wherever I'm at. But like the competition was shipping CDs where you couldn't look at it from home at all. So the doctors didn't know. They just knew they had to be in the like 8 a.m, be at the office. And then they would look at the calendar with the staff, and the staff would be like, here we go. This is what's booked. And the doctor would get to it. So I'm like, there was already a difference in the way we were thinking because it was like in the web. At the end of the day, like what makes a successful startup is iterative cycles and making sure your team is like moving fast from feedback. I just think we had that ethos, feedback, iterate, release, present to doctor, get feedback, iterate, release, present to doctor, feedback, iterate, release, present to doctor. And it didn't stop. It was like over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And when you do that, like you create a really healthy organization, which you're not disconnected from reality. And what was nice about our startup was we had no funding initially. So it was all focused on the user, not anyone's salaries. There was nothing. It was, how do we get the user to use something? And my assumption was when it's valuable enough, revenue will flow for us to be healthy enough to make a living. Are the users happy? Is anyone going to churn? Get the feedback from that user. Are the users happy? Like it was a lot of that. And, I would see people that like owned small businesses around the area. And I'm like, can we get to that level where we could like sustain the business on its own? Yeah. And there were, I've had like a few people that I saw that were successful. Like there was this one guy I knew who sold his startup and was able to buy a big house in Brooklyn. And, I'm like, he did something right. Like, and I saw the way that he iterated, and there were not that many startups. It wasn't like a thing. There's just this one person. I was like, he was able to buy a brownstone in Brooklyn. And like, I'm pretty sure he was well off. I don't know how well off, but like from that experience, but that person did it not in healthcare, but it was software. And I knew that it might be possible. But there were also like things that I saw that were broken in like the larger industries. Like, I don't know. I would go to like, I had an interview at Microsoft. I really like respect Microsoft. I think it's an awesome like company, but I went to, and this is before I started Dr. Chrono. I went and had an interview at Microsoft's offices. They flew me in for like a 3-day thing. And then I had 3 days of interviews at Microsoft. I learned a lot about like just how broken some organizations could be because they didn't ask me to code. They just asked me a series of odd questions to see how I would behave. And in my head, I was like, I'm going to flip it. And we need people that can execute and build and make things quickly in front of me. So like I learned that. I actually, like it's the inverse of what they actually did at Microsoft. If they sat me down and said, code up a project in 3 days and show it to me, I think that's a more valuable like representation of a person's skills. But it felt very cerebral when I went there. And I'm like, you need executors in a startup? And I just was like, I'm going to take the inverse of what they had done to me. Right. And anyone who can execute in front of me is a good person to work with. I think anything is possible with the right dynamic of like co-founders. So again, granted, like me and my co-founder, my co-founder had a different situation than me, but I was burning, I would say $25,000 a year to live. That was all, that was like my burn rate. And that literally was like my life. So I had 2 years of runway in that startup. And I could have like dropped it even lower if I just like, whatever, figured out like how to eat cheaper, like not use my car as much. But like, it is 100% possible today for startups to like do something like that. You don't need to raise funding. You can build product, generate like a large substantial amount of revenue. I mean, this is just in my head. Again, this is just naturally me thinking about it. Do people do it? Yes, because they don't have investors. Not everyone is in Silicon Valley, right? And I'll give you a perfect example. I use this product called Super Whisper. I am assuming that there is no funding, but the product is so amazing and it's one person working it. I'll give you another one, Overcast. An amazing podcasting app that millions upon millions of people use. There's one developer and he's making a huge living. Like, not that that's the path, but like, these are just two of the more newer. I would say Super Whisper. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I'm like, it looks like it's a sole developer and he's just really effing good. And he doesn't want any investors and he's just building this thing for himself. And it's like, that's the type of founder that could go raise money 100% now. And then, Steve Jobs talks about this thing that's coming out. It's going to be like bigger screen. And we didn't know what the name was, no one really knew. It's bigger screen. And I'm like, we could build it for the iPhone and this new thing. What do you think? And my co-founder, the really nice thing about my co-founder at the time, he was always in on my crazy ideas. So, we said we're going to work on it and go all in on 1 day a week. And, we had our users are having their feedback loops and their requests, but like, because we were so fast on iterative cycles, we could build out a prototype version 1 in like 2-3 weeks of this thing. And because we were in the cloud and our competitors were not, the way I was thinking about it was we could take data from the cloud and present it in this new way on this new device. When you are so passionate, you just get obsessed with something. And we both got obsessed with like getting this thing working. It just felt really right, even though I didn't know if anyone would use it. Apple released something called an SDK on the MacBook. And then anyone can build a prototype for this new hardware coming out. Very different than today. Today they show you the product and then developers build on the product. Right. Back then they were like, this thing's coming out. We're going to give you anyone who wants to try and build on this thing. Not out yet. You can do that. So like we were building on the iPhone version 1 and then we were testing version 2 on our Macs. And it just felt right to me because I wanted it. And a lot of it was that. It was, if they're going to read comic books on iPhones, they're going to want to fulfill prescriptions on their iPhones. It makes sense to me. They don't know they want it yet. But I want it for myself if I was a doctor, and then they're going to want it too. And I'm going to build it and it's going to look cool and we're going to make it. And my co-founder's all in and we're both coding 1 day a week. And it just was like this magic day for me every week. I would just get so excited because I would be like, this has never been done, like ever. And I've seen people use tablets, right? Like I went to a doctor's office once and this guy had this like Windows tablet. And it was all on the tablet. And he was like, he was just so frustrated. And I'm like, I could see the frustration. And it was like, I don't know how to explain it. It looked like it was 20 pounds. It was so heavy. It looked like he was holding like a 16-inch MacBook. He was just like pounding, and I'm just like, I don't want to use that. I'm not going to build for that tablet, like the Windows tablet. And it was I don't know, Windows is doing a lot of stuff to try, different ideas. But for me, that didn't feel right. I don't know. I just felt like Apple would do it different than whatever that thing was, because that didn't work for people. It didn't work for the doctors. It didn't excite me. Like I never even asked the doctor. I was like, it doesn't excite me to build on this like device because it looks broken already. But what Apple is going to come out with, like, it felt different to me. Startups are about risk, and you minimize risk because we worked 6 days a week in that startup. 5 days were towards core product. 1 day was towards iPad and iPhone. So the risk was like, if this fails, we still have the core web product. And I was just like, we're like seeing things play out. But like, if it failed, I felt like it wasn't a big risk for us. So you kind of, again, those iterative cycles are very quick. If you kind of fail on something, you just move to the other piece and you just iterate over here. We had to spend all those years like refining those other pieces to make the iPad hyper functional. Like it wasn't, so it was actually like, we didn't see it, but it came to that point. And then it was like this hyper functional thing. If you look at Netflix, I like to look at us like Netflix, because Netflix was the same way. They were shipping DVDs out to people. They got the idea that everything is going to be in the web. So they built a web version of Netflix. And then out of nowhere, this like mobile revolution happens. And they're like, they were thinking like us. And Uber, there was like a cohort of startups that like started their inception. And then mobile was just the natural evolution of all of those companies to like push them like very, very fast forward. So like we just saw it. Netflix saw it, and Pandora saw it. Those were like, again, like when the iPad launched, there were 100 apps on the iPad in day one. And Dr. Chrono was one of them. Only 100 developers that would Apple's Apple, but it was only 100 apps on day one. That was it. I remember like, it launches and I look at it and I'm like, we're in there. We're in the App Store, day one of the iPad. New device, people are excited, people want to try it out. And I remember we bought 2 iPads. You were limited. You can only buy so many. So we bought our 2 iPads. And I remember I plugged it in and then unplugged it. I'm like, let's see if it's like Windows thing that we had, seen, which the battery life was like an hour. I put it on my desk, didn't charge the freaking thing for a month. The way they designed the battery life back then, it just like, I don't know what they did, but it lasted a month on my desk. And I'm like, you could literally operate for weeks as a doctor and not have to plug it in. And then like you would tap and it just would work. My co-founder was just reading their articles online. It was like he just really loved Paul Graham's articles. I didn't know who Y Combinator was. I was just trying to make a living and build something that doctors wanted, right? And my co-founder's like, we should look for some investors at some point. And I'm like, if we get them, we get them. What does that mean? I don't know. But, he would always bring it up to me. So I was like, I'm going to reach out to them and see what's possible. And I emailed, I think it was Jessica and Paul or someone from the team. And then they respond back and they're like, there's no one that, can come to New York at the moment. You'd have to come to California if you were to meet with us. My brain was thinking like, all right, we're in an accelerator, this WeWork thing. There's none of these around, right? There's 4 startups in here. Maybe that'll get YC more interested. And then, I email them back and I'm like, well, we're in this startup hub. We'd love for someone from YC to come and give us a talk. I mean, it was a whole building in New York. That's what's crazy. Like the guy's like was just losing money. It was really sad but awesome because we were like we had the whole building. I loved it. It was like ours with these 4 other startups, and they were small. They were like imagine a building with like 500 chairs in it, and like 20 were taken. I mean, YC is like we'll send Alexis Ohamian. He's the ambassador to the East, and he'll swing by and he'll give a talk at your building. He comes into the building. You know, he comes up the elevator. I got all the other startups excited, and you know, we all go sit in a room, and it was honestly like 10 people. It was like 10 people and Alexis Ohamian. You know, Reddit was kind of small, and Alexis is giving a talk to the 10 people in the room, and I think he had a great time because like everybody there was really like truly doing startups with no funding, right? Like they were all like in it. These are like really hardcore. So he like felt that vibe. He, you know, after the talk, I'm like, can you come over to our desks and we'll just sit down and we'll talk a little bit here and like you can see what we're working on. I'll never forget, like I'm like, check this out. And I show him like the iPad. Instantly, I saw it. He's just like, wait, you're featured by Apple? Because Apple, you know, there was no one else there. And like we were the one. And like he's like, you have no investors. He's like, well, you should fly out and you should meet, you know, Jessica and Paul, and then we'll have a conversation. You know, I had faith we were going to like get bigger customers. It was just like I had faith. I don't know. And of course, there's dark days. It's like you're like, what am I working on? Why am I doing this to myself? Because some of my friends were like buying nice houses. They were buying cars. And meanwhile, I'm kind of like in an apartment like with nothing except my laptop. You know, my co-founder, and then like there were a few other people that like believed in us at the time. I mean, the users like relying on us really made me like feel like I was on a mission. And then my co-founder who quit his job to work with me and is working full time with his livelihood. Like we had real users actually using it like day in and day out. It felt wrong to just shut it down and then letting my co-founder down. Like those were external forces psychologically that made me not want to quit. Funding, I wrote about this in like one blog post years ago. Funding does not equal success. Funding is a data point to say that maybe you're working on something correctly. But with funding, you know, I remember sitting down with like a public CEO of a company, and they just went public. And this is years ago. This is just some other random healthcare startup that went public. And the team there is like, we burned so much capital on so much inefficiency. And I almost fell over. I'm like, holy crap. And like, they didn't do well. The company was not doing well. Like the stock fell a lot. But I'm like, I don't think everyone became wealthy from that experience. Maybe some people did, but it wasn't a sustainable business because they were trying to go public because there was pressure internally, or I don't even know, but I remember like something was not right. Dr. Crono had a lot of competitors that just went bankrupt one after another. A lot of them. So like I see on TechCrunch a company raise $100 million. That's good. Use the capital efficiently. Don't burn it all. Get revenue up. If you don't do that, if you're just having like big parties in San Francisco and like you're just kind of like wasting time and the team becomes highly political and you're basically polarized where you're not iterating quickly anymore, you're done. I think it's about iterative cycles. Like, again, like the best startups have really good alignment, fast iterative cycles. Try to have as little team members as possible. It's important to grow the company, but don't just grow it to grow it, because that was like a number in like, I don't know, 2018, 2019. It was like cool to tell people you had like massive, you know, a massive amount of employees. You know, that's bloat in my mind. It's like, are they actually effective? Like, what's the revenue cost per employee? Right? Like I view it as like, what is your revenue and divide the employee base by that amount. And that's like how efficient the company actually is. Every startup is an experiment. At the end of the day, it's like, will this grow into something that's, you know, hyper successful? But in this startup, we designed it as a remote team, right? So like the team is fully remote. My co-founder lives near me. One of my co-founders, my other co-founder comes a lot to visit, but that is a different dynamic there. the team is international, so it's very different perspectives where you have people from all over the world working on your startup, which is really great because you get talent from everywhere. You're not just hiring like people out of Google or people that were like want to work in Silicon Valley at a startup. So you get like a different ethos there. And the nice thing about this company is I use our product daily. So we build like an AI, AR, accounts receivable agent, like billing platform, right? And there is new stuff coming to make it super hyper flexible. But like I'm envisioning a world where anyone who wants to do a startup has an AR accounts receivable agent team that can basically bill for anything. Today, like billing is very rigid. Like you have a salesperson, they have to sell it at this price. It's hard to negotiate. There's very little leverage. But if you give guidelines on like how you should, make a sale, they should have like a lot more latitude to do it, to close a deal. And like, it's not that way. So like you should be able to throw anything into a billing system and then it should like try to collect that revenue for you. Say you're trying to sell Atlassian 200 seats on some software. And then they have like requirements, they put all that in there. And then you have requirements, you put all that in there. And then normally what happens today is you just give it to the finance team and then they figure out how to bill for it. So you have a finance person or a founder who's like stressed out and they're like, all right, let me figure out how to bill for this. We're just going to like let it happen magically in the background. And like, why do this startup? Because it felt right to me. I would have used this product in the past. I want to use this product in the future. And I'm like, it's great to have something that like you can just bill anything. So there's like moments in time where you can take a newer technology and disrupt like something that's existing. And I think it's sort of happening with legal, with AI, right? So like you can have these legal models really help a lawyer do like 10x the work. So what is that going to do to the legal industry? But like, take that example and like apply that to everything. AI is what mobile was when I started Dr. Chrono. It's this, everyone says it's going to be bigger. It's going to change the world. They're the same to me. People needed mobile. Like it changed the world because you could like send money to somebody from your phone to someone else. Like it's just as disruptive, the mobile industry, as AI is, but it's another moment in time where you can take AI and apply it to whatever industry you're passionate about. And you probably, if you execute well, could like disrupt an industry. I have one friend and he went through YC Winter 23 with me. He's such a nice guy, but man, he questioned himself the whole way up until demo day. Didn't do demo day. Questioned himself after demo day for many years and then shut his company down. I went to YC. There was another founder, true story, last Friday. This guy was questioning everything. And I'm like, what do you want to do? What do you like? You have a moment in time where you're going to do demo day in 15 days. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're just not going to do demo day? That's okay. But like, it builds upon that. You build upon like momentum begets more momentum, begets more momentum. It's like, but the reverse is very, very true. Like lack of momentum creates more lack of momentum, creates more lack of momentum. So like if you're a startup founder, like it's great to like analyze markets, but like you can only do that for so long before like you're wasting just time in your life, right? Either you do it or you don't. Like you kind of have to just take the risk, and people want to de-risk by analyzing things. I'll tell you, VCs analyze things and they burn cash, and some of them lose their money. Like even VCs can't figure it out. That's why it's a venture capital. Like they're kind of venturing into something and it's an unknown area and they're hoping like they make their money back. So like, it's worth the risk to take it. And, if you're a founder going, it's worth going that path.